The notification pinged at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. Daniel wasn't snooping. His wife Sarah's laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, connected to the charger she'd forgotten to unplug before heading to bed. The message preview glowed on the screen, impossible to ignore as he walked past to lock the front door. Does the clueless husband suspect anything yet? Face with tears of joy. Daniel froze, his hand still on the doorknob. The sender's name read Ryan, work. His stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. He stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds, his mind racing through explanations that might make this innocent. Maybe it was about a surprise party. Maybe it was an inside joke about a different colleague's husband. But deep down, he already knew. His hands trembled slightly as he walked back to the laptop. He shouldn't look. He knew he shouldn't. But that message sat there like a live grenade, and he couldn't just walk away. He sat down slowly, the kitchen chair creaking under his weight. The screen hadn't locked yet. Sarah never remembered to set a short timeout. He clicked on the message thread. What he found in the next 15 minutes shattered the reality he'd been living in for the past 8 months. Hundreds of messages stretched back to February, right after Sarah's company had brought in Ryan as the new regional operations manager. The early messages seemed professional enough, project updates, meeting notes, strategy discussions. But somewhere around late March, the tone shifted. Missing you already. Today was too short. Can't stop thinking about Tuesday night. When can we do that again? Your husband called during our meeting. I had to bite my tongue not to laugh. Daniel's chest tightened. Tuesday night. 3 weeks ago, Sarah had told him she was working late on the quarterly presentation. She'd come home at midnight, kissed him on the forehead while he pretended to sleep, and slipped into bed smelling of wine and cologne that definitely wasn't his. He scrolled further, his eyes burning as he read message after message. They'd been careful, he'd give them that. No explicit photos, nothing that could be considered hard evidence in a legal sense. But the emotional affair was crystal clear, and the physical one was heavily implied in their coded language about late-night strategy sessions and off-site meetings. Then he found the messages from yesterday. Ryan had lunch with Peterson from HR today. He mentioned the VP promotions are basically locked in. You and me, babe. We did it. Sarah, I still can't believe it. Director of Operations and VP of Strategic Planning. We'll practically be running the Eastern Division together. Ryan, think your husband will notice you're gone even more? Or is he too busy with his little hobby projects? Sarah, Daniel, please. He barely looks up from his computer. I could probably move you into the guest room and he wouldn't notice for a week. Face with tears of joy. Ryan, the clueless husband strikes again. Honestly, sometimes I feel bad for the guy. Sarah, don't. He's content in his little bubble. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. Daniel read that exchange 3 times, each pass driving the knife deeper. His little hobby projects were the freelance consulting work that had helped them afford the down payment on this house. The same house where Sarah was planning her future with another man. He sat back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. The initial shock was giving way to something else, a cold, calculated clarity he didn't know he possessed. Sarah and Ryan thought he was clueless. They thought he was so absorbed in his own world that he'd never notice his wife slipping away. They were about to learn just how observant the clueless husband could be. Daniel pulled out his phone and began taking screenshots. Every message, every joke at his expense, every mention of their secret meetings. He documented everything methodically, organizing the images into folders by date and topic. As he worked, his mind was already forming a plan. He wouldn't scream. He wouldn't cry. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of an emotional confrontation where they could paint him as the unstable, jealous husband. Instead, he'd let their own words destroy them. Friday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Sarah hummed in the shower, the same cheerful tune she'd been humming for weeks, a sound Daniel had mistakenly interpreted as contentment in their marriage rather than what it actually was, the satisfaction of getting away with betrayal. He lay in bed, pretending to sleep, listening to her move through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. I've got that executive meeting this morning, she said, leaning over to kiss his cheek. Her hair was still damp, smelling of expensive shampoo. Probably won't be home until late. Ryan and I need to finalize the transition plan for our new roles. Ryan and I. She didn't even try to hide it anymore because she genuinely believed he wasn't paying attention. Sounds important, Daniel mumbled, maintaining the facade of the drowsy, disinterested husband they'd mocked. Good luck. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, Daniel was up. He'd barely slept, spending most of the night researching. What he'd discovered had transformed his hurt into something more powerful: leverage. Clearwater Technologies, Sarah's employer, had strict policies about workplace relationships, especially between employees in the same reporting chain. He'd found the entire employee handbook posted on their internal wiki, accessible through Sarah's saved passwords. Section 4.7 was particularly relevant: romantic or sexual relationships between supervisors and subordinates, or between employees who collaborate on strategic initiatives, must be disclosed to human resources immediately. Failure to disclose such relationships may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. Ryan, as regional operations manager, was technically Sarah's peer, but they both reported to the same VP. More importantly, they were collaborating on the Eastern Division restructuring, a strategic initiative if there ever was one. And they were about to be promoted into positions where Ryan would have indirect authority over Sarah's budget and resources. They hadn't disclosed anything. In fact, they'd actively concealed it. Daniel spent the morning crafting his report. He created an anonymous email address using a VPN and a burner account that couldn't be traced to him. He didn't write an emotional screed or a jealous husband's rant. Instead, he wrote a clinical, professional report that an HR department couldn't ignore. To whom it may concern. I am writing to report a serious violation of company policy regarding undisclosed workplace relationships and potential conflicts of interest. Sarah Kellerman, Director, Strategic Planning, and Ryan Porter, Regional Operations Manager, have been engaged in an undisclosed romantic and/or sexual relationship while collaborating on the Q3-Q4 Eastern Division restructuring initiative. This relationship has been ongoing since approximately February of this year and has been deliberately concealed from HR and management. Both employees are currently being considered for VP-level promotions that would place them in overlapping authority structures, creating significant conflicts of interest. I have attached documentation supporting these claims, including communications between the two employees that reference their relationship, undisclosed personal meetings, and discussions of their upcoming promotions. This evidence was obtained from company communication systems. This relationship and its concealment violate Section 4.7 of the Employee Handbook. Given the senior level of both employees and the strategic importance of the projects they're collaborating on, I believe this matter requires immediate investigation. I am submitting this report anonymously due to concerns about potential retaliation, but I am willing to provide additional information if needed through this secure channel. Thank you for your attention to this serious matter. He attached 50 carefully selected screenshots. Not the cruelest messages. He didn't need to twist the knife. Just the ones that clearly documented the relationship, the concealment, and the professional collaboration that made it a policy violation. Messages referencing Tuesday night, discussions of keeping their relationship secret, mentions of their upcoming joint leadership of the Eastern Division. Daniel read through the email 3 times, checking for anything that might reveal his identity or sound too emotional. It was perfect, professional, documented, and absolutely devastating. He clicked send at 10:47 a.m. Then he went to the gym, worked out for 90 minutes, came home, showered, and made himself lunch. He responded to some client emails about a consulting project. He paid some bills. He acted exactly like the clueless, oblivious husband who was too absorbed in his own little world to notice what was happening around him. His phone rang at 3:15 p.m. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," he answered, keeping his voice casual. "Daniel." Her voice was tight, strained. "Something's come up at work. I might be really late tonight. Like, really late. Everything okay?" "It's fine. Just unexpected issues. Don't wait up." She hung up before he could respond. Daniel smiled grimly. The wheels were turning at Clearwater Technologies. HR departments didn't waste time when anonymous reports came with that much documentation. They'd be conducting preliminary interviews, reviewing policies, consulting with legal. Sarah and Ryan's carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. He spent the evening researching divorce attorneys and downloading financial records. Sarah had always handled their joint accounts, but he had access to everything. He started transferring screenshots of all their financial statements to a secure cloud drive. Their savings, their investment accounts, the mortgage details, credit card statements. If he was going to do this, he was going to do it right. Sarah came home at 11:30 p.m., her face pale and drawn. She barely spoke to him, just mumbled something about being exhausted and went straight to bed. Through the bedroom door, he could hear her typing frantically on her phone. Daniel slept in the guest room that night, claiming he didn't want to disturb her since she'd had such a stressful day. The clueless husband was gone. In his place was someone who'd learned that sometimes the best revenge wasn't hot and impulsive. It was cold, calculated, and absolutely inevitable. Monday morning hit like a Category 5 hurricane. Daniel was up early, coffee in hand, watching Sarah rush through her morning routine with barely concealed panic. Her phone had been buzzing since 6 a.m., she'd silenced it, but he could see the screen lighting up every few minutes with incoming messages. "Big day?" he asked innocently, sipping his coffee. "You have no idea," she muttered, not even looking at him as she applied her makeup with shaking hands. "There's this situation at work. It's complicated. Want to talk about it?" "No. I can't. It's confidential." She grabbed her bag and headed for the door, then paused. "Daniel, if anyone calls asking about me, anyone at all, tell them I'm not available and take a message. Don't tell them anything about our schedule or my whereabouts." He raised his eyebrows. "That sounds serious. Are you in some kind of trouble? Just do it, okay? Please." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. After she left, Daniel settled into work from home, as he did most Mondays. But his focus wasn't on his consulting projects. It was on the carefully monitored email account he'd created. At 9:47 a.m., he received exactly what he'd been waiting for, a response from Clearwater Technologies HR. "Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. We have initiated a formal investigation into your allegations. If you have any additional information that may be relevant, please respond to this secure channel. Your anonymity will be protected to the fullest extent possible under company policy and applicable law." Daniel leaned back in his chair. They were taking it seriously. Of course they were. He'd handed them a liability nightmare wrapped in a bow. An undisclosed relationship between senior employees who were about to be promoted into overlapping authority structures. That was every HR department's worst fear, especially in the current corporate climate where one whistleblower lawsuit could cost millions. What Daniel had learned from his research was that companies like Clearwater didn't mess around with these situations. The investigation would be swift and thorough. They'd interview Sarah and Ryan separately, review communication logs, talk to colleagues who might have noticed something. And they'd do it all before the VP promotions were officially announced, because announcing a promotion and then having to revoke it was a PR nightmare. His phone rang at 2:30 p.m. It was Sarah. "They're grilling us," she said without preamble, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone reported us to HR. They have messages. Daniel. Screenshots of our conversations." "What conversations?" Daniel asked, proud of how confused he sounded. "With who?" "With Ryan. Someone's been accessing our company communications and they sent everything to HR. They know we've been working closely together, and someone's trying to make it look like something inappropriate." "Is it something inappropriate?" Silence on the other end. Then, "It's complicated. We're friends, close friends, and some of our messages might look bad out of context. But someone's trying to sabotage us right before our promotions. This could ruin everything we've worked for." "Who would do something like that?" "I don't know, but when I find out." She left the threat hanging. "Look, I'm going to be in meetings all afternoon. HR, legal, probably my supervisor. This is a nightmare. Do you need me to do anything? Just be supportive, okay? I might need you to be my character witness or something. Tell them we have a strong marriage, that I'm trustworthy, that kind of thing. Daniel almost laughed at the audacity. She wanted him to vouch for her trustworthiness while she was being investigated for an affair. Of course, he said. Whatever you need. After she hung up, he sat for a long moment, staring at his phone. The guilt that might have plagued another person in his position was notably absent. He'd simply provided factual information to the appropriate department. If Sarah and Ryan's own words were damning, that wasn't his fault, it was theirs. At 4:15 p.m., his burner email account received another message, this time from a different address within Clearwater's domain. The subject line read, "Follow-up questions, confidential investigation. Thank you again for your report. As our investigation proceeds, we need clarification on several points. What is your relationship to the employees in question? How did you obtain access to their communications? Do you have knowledge of any specific incidents where their relationship affected business decisions or created conflicts of interest? Are you aware of any other employees who have knowledge of this relationship? Your responses will help us determine the scope and severity of the policy violations. Please note that while we are respecting your anonymity, we may need additional information to proceed with appropriate disciplinary actions." Daniel considered his response carefully. He needed to give them enough to keep the investigation moving without revealing his identity. After an hour of drafting and revising, he sent his reply. 1. I prefer not to disclose my specific relationship to protect my anonymity, but I have regular indirect contact with both employees through professional channels. The communications were obtained through shared company resources that both employees left accessible. I did not hack or illegally access any systems. I have knowledge of multiple undisclosed personal meetings between the employees that coincided with business travel and were not reflected in official schedules or expense reports. I can provide specific dates if needed. I also have evidence of discussions about structuring their upcoming VP roles to facilitate continued close collaboration, which suggests their relationship is influencing strategic business decisions. I believe other employees have noticed the unusual closeness between them but may be reluctant to report it due to both employees' senior positions and influence within the company. I can provide additional documentation if required, including expense reports that may not align with official business justifications. That last part was a bluff. He didn't actually have their expense reports, but he suspected that once HR started looking, they'd find discrepancies. People having affairs rarely remembered to keep their expense reports completely clean. He sent the email and went to make dinner. Sarah had texted to say she wouldn't be home until late again. Still dealing with this mess, her message read. Order something for yourself. Daniel made pasta, poured himself a glass of wine, and settled in to watch a movie. Somewhere across town, his wife and her lover were probably in separate conference rooms, being methodically taken apart by HR investigators armed with their own words. The clueless husband had become invisible again, exactly as he'd planned. By Tuesday afternoon, the situation at Clearwater Technologies had escalated from an internal investigation to a full-scale corporate crisis. Daniel knew this because Sarah had come home Monday night looking like she'd aged 5 years in a single day, and by Tuesday morning, she was receiving calls from lawyers, both company lawyers and a personal attorney she'd apparently retained. "They're suspending us pending investigation," she told Daniel Tuesday morning, her voice hollow. "Both of us. Ryan and me. They're freezing our promotions and removing us from the Eastern Division project. Daniel, this is destroying my career." He looked up from his laptop, carefully arranging his features into concerned confusion. "I don't understand. You said it was just some messages that looked bad out of context. Why would they suspend you over that?" "Because whoever sent them to HR included more than just messages." She was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "They have dates, times, expense reports. They're claiming Ryan and I falsified business justifications for personal trips. They're saying we violated conflict of interest policies and potentially committed expense fraud." "Did you?" She spun to face him. "We may have blurred some lines. A few dinner meetings that ran long, maybe a couple of conferences where we extended the stay, but everyone does that. They're making it sound like we embezzled company funds when all we did was what every executive does. But you and Ryan aren't just colleagues, are you? Daniel kept his voice gentle, almost sympathetic. You two seem really close. Maybe too close for the company's comfort. Sarah's face went pale. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe whoever reported you knew something that made those expense reports look worse than they actually are. Like if you two were, I don't know, involved somehow. That's ridiculous. But her eyes wouldn't meet his. Is it? Daniel stood up, closing his laptop. Sarah, I'm not stupid. I've watched you light up every time Ryan's name comes up. I've noticed you working late on nights when you come home smelling like wine and cologne. I've seen the way you check your phone constantly and hide the screen when I walk by. Her face crumbled. Daniel, I'm not done. His voice was still calm, still controlled. I don't know exactly what's been going on between you two, and right now, I don't care. What I care about is that you're in trouble at work, and you need to figure out if defending whatever you have with Ryan is worth your career. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone at your company knows exactly what's been happening, and they've documented it well enough that HR is taking it seriously. Sarah sank into a chair, her head in her hands. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were so careful. There it was. The admission he'd been waiting for, though he didn't actually need it. He had all the evidence he required saved in multiple secure locations. But hearing her say it out loud still sent a fresh wave of pain through his chest. How long? He asked quietly. Since March. But Daniel, it's not what you think. We didn't mean for it to happen. We just connected on this project, and things got complicated, and... Save it. He held up his hand. Whatever you need to tell yourself to sleep at night, that's your business. But right now, you need to decide something. Are you going to come clean to HR and maybe save part of your career, or are you going to keep lying and hope this goes away? She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I can't admit it. If I admit we had a relationship, they'll fire us both. The company policy is clear. Undisclosed relationships between collaborating employees are grounds for termination, especially at our level. We'd lose everything. Then you're already lost, Daniel said. Because whoever reported you has documentation. You said so yourself. They're not going to drop this. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a news alert from a local business blog he'd started following. The headline made his stomach flip. Clearwater Technologies suspends 2 executives amid ethics investigation. He showed Sarah the screen. Her face went from pale to ashen. Oh my God. It's public. How is it public already? Daniel skimmed the article. Someone had leaked the investigation to the press, probably someone at Clearwater who was unhappy with how Sarah and Ryan had been fast-tracked for promotions. The article didn't name them specifically, but it mentioned 2 senior executives under investigation for undisclosed conflicts of interest and potential expense fraud related to an inappropriate workplace relationship. In their industry, in their city, people would figure out who it was by the end of the day. Sarah's phone started ringing. Then Daniel's. Then Sarah's again. She looked at the screen and her hands started shaking. It's my mother. And my sister. And, oh God, it's people from work. How did this get out so fast? The internet, Daniel said simply. You should probably answer them. But she just sat there, frozen, as both their phones continued to buzz with calls and texts. Daniel picked up his phone and started reading the messages. Friends asking if Sarah was okay. Former colleagues expressing shock. His own sister asking if the news story was about Sarah's company. By Wednesday morning, it had exploded across professional networks. Someone at Clearwater had provided more details to the business press, and now multiple outlets were running stories about the executive affair scandal at one of the region's major tech companies. They still weren't naming Sarah and Ryan directly, but their LinkedIn profiles were being passed around in screenshots, their professional reputations being dissected by thousands of strangers. Ryan called Sarah on Wednesday afternoon. Daniel heard her end of the conversation from his office. This is your fault. You said we were being careful. Yes, I know we both participated, but you're the one who insisted on using company chat. I don't care what the lawyers say, my career is over. No, we can't see each other. Are you insane? That's exactly what they're watching for. She hung up and screamed, an actual primal scream of frustration and rage. Daniel found her in their bedroom, surrounded by tissues, her laptop open to the latest article about the scandal. This one had a comment section, and people who claimed to work at Clearwater were sharing details. Lots of details. Everyone knows, she whispered. Everyone in the industry knows it's me and Ryan. Our names are in the comments. People are calling us cheaters and frauds. There are memes, Daniel. Actual memes about us. He sat down next to her, maintaining the appearance of the supportive husband. What did your lawyer say? That I should prepare for termination. They found 3 conferences where Ryan and I extended our stays and charged the extra nights to the company, plus 5 dinner meetings that exceeded reasonable business expenses. Combined with the undisclosed relationship and the messages about keeping it secret, it's enough for them to fire us for cause. What about Ryan? His done. They're terminating him Friday. Mine might take longer because I've been there longer and my lawyer thinks we can negotiate a resignation instead of a firing, but either way. She looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. I'm going to lose my job. My reputation. Probably my entire career in this industry, over a stupid affair that wasn't even that serious. Daniel felt a flicker of something, not quite satisfaction, not quite vindication. Maybe it was just the recognition that actions had consequences, even for people who thought they were too smart to get caught. Not that serious, he repeated quietly. Sarah's face crumpled. I'm sorry. God, Daniel, I'm so sorry. You've been nothing but supportive through this whole nightmare, and I've been lying to you for months. You deserve so much better than this. She had no idea how much better he was about to demand. The following Monday arrived with brutal finality. Daniel woke early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a folder he'd been preparing all week. Inside were printed copies of everything, the messages, the timeline, financial records, and papers from the divorce attorney he'd quietly retained on Thursday. Sarah was still asleep. She'd been sleeping more and more, hiding from the wreckage of her life. On Friday, Clearwater had officially terminated Ryan for cause. Sarah's termination was scheduled for today at 10 a.m., though her lawyer was still trying to negotiate a resignation agreement that might preserve some semblance of her professional reputation. She emerged from the bedroom at 7:30, already dressed in a business suit despite having nowhere to go. Habits die hard. I thought you might want to look professional for your final meeting, Daniel said, gesturing to her outfit. The lawyer thinks looking polished might help with the negotiation. She poured coffee with shaking hands. I still can't believe this is happening. 2 weeks ago, I was about to become a VP. Now I'm about to be fired and blackballed from my entire industry. Not quite 2 weeks ago, Daniel said calmly. 11 days ago, to be exact. That Thursday night when I saw the messages on your laptop. Sarah's cup stopped halfway to her mouth. What? Daniel opened the folder and slid the first page across the table, a printout of the message from Ryan asking about the clueless husband. Her face went through several shades of pale as she recognized it. I saw this message Thursday night, 11 days ago, Daniel continued, his voice steady and clinical. I read through your entire chat history with Ryan. Every message, every joke at my expense, every plan you two made for your future together. Every time you called me clueless or said I wouldn't notice you slipping away. Daniel, I can explain. I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in you understanding exactly how this happened. He slid another page across the table. This is the anonymous report I sent to Clearwater's HR department on Friday morning. These are the screenshots I provided. This is the follow-up information I gave them when they asked for clarification. Sarah stared at the documents, her face transforming from confusion to horror to rage. You destroyed my career. You reported us. I provided factual information about policy violations to the appropriate corporate department. You destroyed your own career by having an affair, falsifying expense reports, and mocking your husband while planning your promotions with your lover. You vindictive bastard. She was on her feet now, shaking with fury. You didn't just report us, you leaked it to the press. You made sure everyone would know. Actually, I didn't leak it to the press. That was probably someone at Clearwater who was upset that you and Ryan were being promoted over more qualified candidates. But I can't say I'm sorry it happened. Daniel remained seated, calm. You and Ryan thought I was too absorbed in my little hobby projects to notice what was happening in my own marriage. You thought I was blind and useless. So I let you keep thinking that while I documented everything. Sarah grabbed the edge of the table. Why? Why didn't you just confront me? We could have worked this out. Could we? Because from your messages, it sounded like you'd already made your choice. You were planning a future with Ryan. You said I lived in a little bubble and what I didn't know wouldn't hurt me. He stood up now, meeting her eyes. But here's what you didn't understand. I wasn't clueless. I was just quiet. And you mistook my quietness for blindness. So you decided to ruin my life instead of trying to save our marriage. I decided to protect myself from someone who was actively betraying me while mocking me to her lover. There's a difference. He slid the final set of papers across the table. These are divorce papers. I'm filing on grounds of adultery. Given your admitted affair and the evidence I have, my attorney is confident we can get a favorable settlement. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the papers. You've thought of everything, haven't you? You've been planning this whole thing while pretending to be the supportive husband. I learned from the best, Daniel said. You spent months pretending to be the faithful wife while planning your future with Ryan. I spent 11 days pretending to be oblivious while protecting my interests. The difference is, I actually had the evidence to back up my strategy. Ryan's destroyed too, you know, Sarah said, her voice breaking. He lost everything. His job, his reputation. His fiancée left him when she found out. He's talking about leaving the city entirely because he can't face the judgment. And that's supposed to make me feel guilty. Daniel shook his head. You both made choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to hide it from HR. You chose to falsify expense reports. You chose to mock me in your messages. Every single consequence you're facing right now is the result of decisions you made. Sarah sank back into her chair, the divorce papers clutched in her hands. I never thought you had it in you. The cold calculation, the planning, the revenge. I thought you were too nice, too passive. I was never passive, Daniel corrected. I was respectful. I trusted you. I gave you space because I thought we were partners. But you interpreted my trust as weakness and my respect as ignorance. That was your mistake, not mine. His phone buzzed, a text from his attorney confirming their 2 p.m. appointment. He'd be filing the divorce papers this afternoon, officially starting the legal process. His lawyer had already frozen their joint accounts, documented Sarah's affair, and prepared a settlement proposal that heavily favored Daniel given the circumstances. You should probably call your lawyer about those termination negotiations, Daniel said, gathering his folder. I'm heading out. I've got appointments all afternoon. I'll be staying at a hotel for the next few weeks while we sort out the living arrangements. Where am I supposed to go? Sarah asked, her voice small. That's not my problem anymore. You're a resourceful person. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Maybe Ryan can help, though I doubt his fiancée will appreciate that. Daniel headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I didn't enjoy this. I didn't want our marriage to end this way. But you forced my hand when you decided I was too clueless to notice or too weak to do anything about it. I'm sorry, she whispered. For all of it. The affair, the messages, underestimating you. I'm truly sorry. I believe you are sorry. Sorry you got caught. Sorry you lost your promotion. Sorry your career is over. But I don't think you're sorry for what you actually did, just for the consequences. He opened the door. Sign the divorce papers. My attorney will be in touch about the settlement. And Sarah, next time you think someone is clueless, remember that sometimes the quietest person in the room is actually the one paying the closest attention. As Daniel drove away from the house he'd shared with Sarah for 6 years, he felt an unexpected sense of peace. The clueless husband they'd mocked was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned that self-respect sometimes required difficult choices. Sarah and Ryan had built their relationship on a foundation of lies and contempt, and that foundation had collapsed under the weight of their own words. By the following Monday, the aftermath was complete. Ryan had indeed left the city, relocating across the country to escape the professional damage. Sarah had accepted a resignation agreement from Clearwater that at least avoided the word termination on her official record, though everyone in the industry knew what had really happened. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily, unable to afford their house on her own without a job. The divorce proceedings were underway, with Sarah's leverage essentially non-existent given the documented affair. Daniel's attorney had negotiated a settlement that protected his assets and ensured he wouldn't be paying spousal support to someone who destroyed their marriage. 3 weeks after that Thursday night discovery, Daniel sat in his new apartment, smaller than the house, but entirely his, and reflected on the journey. He wasn't proud of the destruction he'd caused, but he wasn't ashamed either. He'd simply refused to be the punchline to someone else's joke. His phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "Hey man, heard about you and Sarah. I'm sorry. If you need anything, let me know." Daniel smiled slightly and typed back, "Thanks. I'm actually doing okay. Better than okay, honestly. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is learning who people really are." He hit send and closed his phone. Somewhere in the city, Sarah and Ryan were dealing with the consequences of their choices, the lost careers, the damaged reputations, the professional exile. They'd thought the clueless husband would never be the wiser, that they could build their future on the ruins of his dignity. They'd learned otherwise. And in learning that lesson, they discovered that sometimes the quietest revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their own actions. Daniel hadn't destroyed them, they'd destroyed themselves. He'd just made sure the evidence was presented to the right people at the right time. The clueless husband had turned out to be the most aware person in the entire situation. And by the time Sarah and Ryan realized it, their lives were already in shambles, all from their own doing, documented in their own words, collapsed by their own arrogance. Justice, Daniel had learned, didn't always require dramatic confrontations or elaborate schemes. Sometimes it just required patience, documentation, and the willingness to let people destroy themselves with their own choices. And on that Monday, 3 weeks after the discovery that changed everything, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in months: free.